Emma's seemingly perfect life shatters when she discovers her husband David's betrayal with her close friend Nicole. The affair not only destroys her marriage, but leaves her grappling with trust and heartbreak. Just as Emma begins to rebuild her life through her bakery, Sweet Escape, Nicole returns, this time with a shocking revelation that drags Emma back into David's manipulative world. As the web of infidelity, lies, and deceit deepens, Emma is forced to confront the fallout of their actions, igniting outrage and disbelief over the audacity and betrayal that threaten to unravel everything she's worked to rebuild. Welcome back, and thanks for tuning in to another captivating story here. Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We'd love to know now. Grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's jump into today's tale of love, betrayal, and the shocking truths that come to light. It was the summer of 2018, and the small town of Greenridge had never looked more picturesque. The town was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and life moved at a slower, more comforting pace. For Emma Carter, a 35-year-old baker and owner of the beloved Sweet Escape Bakery, Greenridge was her safe haven. She had built her business from the ground up, pouring her heart into every cupcake, every croissant, and every warm loaf of bread. The bakery was more than her livelihood. It was her passion and her escape from the struggles of the outside world. Emma wasn't just known for her mouth-watering pastries. She was known for her kind heart, always the first to offer help to anyone in need. Emma had become a staple in the community. She had an easy smile, warm brown eyes, and a laugh that could brighten the gloomiest of days. She seemed to have it all together, or so everyone thought. At home, life was a bit more complicated. Emma was married to David, her high school sweetheart. On the surface, they appeared to have the perfect marriage. Two people who grew up together, fell in love, and built a life side by side. David was the town's star handyman, always in demand for his ability to fix just about anything. The two were a picture-perfect couple, or so it seemed to everyone but Emma. You see, David wasn't the same man Emma had married all those years ago. He had changed lately. He'd been distant, coming home late, snapping at Emma over the smallest things, and spending more time scrolling on his phone than having meaningful conversations. Emma felt a growing sense of unease. Something wasn't right, and no matter how much she tried to convince herself otherwise, the doubt gnawed at her. One Friday afternoon, Emma was closing up the bakery after a particularly busy day when her best friend, Megan, stopped by. Megan was Emma's rock, the kind of friend who could read her like a book. With her fiery red hair and quick wit, Megan was as bold as Emma was reserved. "You look like you've been up all night worrying again," Megan said, sliding onto one of the bakery stools. "What's going on?" Emma hesitated. She hadn't told anyone about the growing tension in her marriage, not even Megan. But keeping it all bottled up was exhausting. "It's David," Emma finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's been acting different, distant. I don't know what's going on, but something feels off." Megan's expression softened. "Have you talked to him about it?" "I've tried," Emma said, fiddling with a stray piece of dough on the counter. "But every time I bring it up, he brushes me off or gets defensive. I don't want to make things worse." Megan gave her a pointed look. "Emma, you deserve answers. If something's going on, you can't just ignore it and hope it'll go away." Emma nodded, knowing Megan was right. But confronting David felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure of whether she'd find solid ground or fall into the abyss. That night, Emma decided to take Megan's advice. When David came home, she mustered her courage and approached him in the living room. He was sitting on the couch, his phone in hand as usual. "David, can we talk?" Emma asked, her heart pounding. David barely looked up. "What about?" "About us," Emma said, sitting down beside him. "You've been so distant lately, and I feel like something's wrong. If there's something going on, I need you to be honest with me." David sighed, finally setting his phone down. "Emma, I'm just stressed. Work has been crazy, and I've had a lot on my mind. It has nothing to do with you." His words were reassuring, but his tone wasn't. There was a coldness in his voice that Emma couldn't ignore. "David, I want to believe you," she said, her voice shaking, "but I can't shake this feeling that you're hiding something from me." David stood abruptly, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what you want me to say, Emma. I'm tired. Okay? Can we just drop this? Emma watched him walk away, feeling more defeated than ever. She wanted to believe him, but her intuition told her otherwise. Something was wrong, and she couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. The following week, Emma found herself in the middle of an unexpected discovery. She was cleaning out the hall closet when she stumbled upon a receipt crumpled in one of David's old jackets. At first glance, it seemed harmless, a receipt from a high-end restaurant in the city. But then she saw the date. Last Thursday, David had told her he was working late that night. Her hands trembled as she stared at the receipt. Why would David lie about working late? And who had he been with? Emma didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the evidence was piling up. She needed answers, and there was only one person who might be able to help her get them. Megan. Later that evening, she called her best friend over and showed her the receipt. "This doesn't look good," Megan admitted, her expression serious. "But before we assume the worst, let's figure out what's really going on. Do you want me to do some digging?" Emma hesitated. She didn't want to invade David's privacy, but she also couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in her gut. "Okay," she said finally. "But be discreet, I don't want to start a fight unless I know for sure." Megan nodded, her determination evident. "Don't worry, Em. We'll get to the bottom of this." As the days passed, Emma tried to carry on as usual, but the weight of uncertainty was unbearable. Then, one afternoon, Megan called her with news that turned Emma's world upside down. Emma's fingers fumbled to pick up the phone as she saw Megan's name flash on the screen. Her voice cracked as she answered. "Megan, did you find something?" On the other end, Megan's voice was steady, but laced with unease. "Emma, you need to sit down for this." Emma's heart dropped. She sat on the edge of the couch, her free hand clutching the armrest. "What is it?" "Well, I checked the restaurant you found the receipt for David was there," Megan began hesitantly. "And he wasn't alone. He was with a woman I saw photos from their Instagram geotag. Someone posted a group picture, and he's in the background, with her." The words hit Emma like a freight train. "Who is she?" she whispered. "Her name's Nicole Harper," Megan said. She's the new yoga instructor at the gym. You know, the one David signed up for a membership at a few months ago?" Emma's mind reeled Nicole. The name felt like a dagger, sharp and cruel. Emma had always trusted David, but now the cracks in their marriage didn't just feel like cracks. They felt like the entire foundation was crumbling. "I can't believe this," Emma murmured. "What else do you know?" Megan sighed. "I didn't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I looked through her profile. She's been posting these cryptic captions about new connections and finding what you deserve. It could mean nothing, but it doesn't look good." Emma's throat tightened as tears pricked her eyes. She had spent years building a life with David, only to be blindsided by the possibility that he might be seeing someone else behind her back. "Emma, are you okay?" Megan asked gently. "No," Emma admitted, her voice shaking. "But thank you for telling me I needed to know." The days that followed were agonizing. Emma tried to carry on as if everything was normal, but the weight of suspicion bore down on her. Every time she looked at David, she felt like she was seeing a stranger. He still came home late, still kept his phone glued to his hand, and still avoided meaningful conversations. But now, Emma couldn't help but wonder if every excuse he gave was a lie. One evening, Emma decided she couldn't live in limbo anymore. She needed answers, and she needed them now. She waited until David came home, watching as he tossed his keys onto the kitchen counter and grabbed a beer from the fridge. "David," she said, her voice firm, "we need to talk." He glanced at her, his expression guarded. "What is it now?" Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I know about Nicole." For a moment, David froze. His hand tightened around the beer bottle, his knuckles turning white. Then he forced a laugh, shaking his head. "Nicole, what are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb," Emma shot back, her voice trembling. "I found the receipt from the restaurant Megan saw the photos. I know you've been spending time with her." David's face darkened, his usual calm demeanor replaced by something colder. "So you're spying on me now? Is that what this is?" Emma's heart ached at his deflection, but she didn't back down. "This isn't about spying, David. This is about our marriage. About the fact that you've been lying to me. David set the beer down with a loud thud, running a hand through his hair. You don't understand, Emma. Then explain it to me, she demanded. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been cheating on me. For a moment, David said nothing. The silence was deafening, and Emma felt like the air was being sucked out of the room. Finally, he looked up at her, his eyes filled with something she couldn't quite read. It's not what you think, he said quietly. Nicole and I... It's complicated. Emma felt her chest tighten. Complicated? How do you love her? David hesitated, and in that pause, Emma felt her heart shatter into a million pieces. I don't know, he admitted finally. Things between us, they're easy with you. It feels like everything's a struggle. The bakery, the bills, everything. Emma's eyes filled with tears as his words cut deeper than any knife ever could. So that's it? You decided to throw away our marriage because it's not easy anymore? David looked away, unable to meet her gaze. I didn't mean for it to happen, Emma. But it did, she whispered. And now I don't know if I can ever forgive you. Emma spent the next few days in a fog. The confrontation with David had left her feeling hollow, as if a piece of her soul had been ripped away. She confided in Megan, who did her best to support her. But even Megan's reassurances couldn't erase the pain Emma felt. Do you want to stay and try to work things out? Megan asked one evening as they sat in the bakery after hours. Or are you ready to walk away? Emma stared at the counter, her mind racing with memories of her life with David, the good, the bad, and everything in between. I don't know, she admitted. Part of me wants to fight for what we had, but another part of me wonders if it's even worth it. Megan reached across the counter, squeezing Emma's hand. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. But don't let him make you feel like this is your fault. You deserve better. A week later, Emma found herself at a crossroads. She had confronted David again, demanding to know if he was willing to end things with Nicole and commit to repairing their marriage. His response had been lukewarm at best, full of half-hearted apologies and promises that felt empty. That night, as Emma sat alone in the quiet of the bakery, she made a decision. She couldn't keep living in the shadow of David's betrayal. It was time to take control of her life, even if it meant letting go of the man she had once loved. The next morning, she handed David a set of papers, a formal separation agreement. He stared at them in shock, but Emma didn't waver. I can't do this anymore, she said firmly. I deserve someone who chooses me, every single day. If you can't be that person, then it's time for us to go our separate ways. David's shoulders sagged, and for the first time, Emma saw a flicker of regret in his eyes. I never wanted it to end like this, he said quietly. Neither did I, Emma replied. But here we are. As Emma began the process of rebuilding her life, she leaned on the people who had always been there for her. Megan, her loyal customers, and the tight-knit community of Greenridge. The bakery became her refuge, a place where she could channel her pain into something beautiful. Every loaf of bread, every cake, every cookie was a reminder that even in the face of heartbreak, she could create something meaningful. And slowly but surely, Emma began to heal. Remember, if this story has touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more captivating tales like this one. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Emma thought she had experienced every shade of heartbreak, but as the days turned into weeks, the cracks in her life widened into chasms. The bakery was her sanctuary, but even there, whispers of her personal life began to circulate. Greenridge, small as it was, thrived on gossip, and Emma found herself under the scrutinizing gaze of a town that once adored her. It wasn't just the townsfolk who made things difficult. David was still in the house, and though Emma had handed him separation papers, he hadn't officially signed them. They navigated the same spaces like strangers, their conversations clipped and tense. And then there was Nicole. Though Emma tried to keep her focus on herself, news of Nicole's continued presence in David's life reached her in quiet, unkind waves. Megan was relentless in her support, but even her fiery determination couldn't shield Emma from the painful reality of what was happening. You need to get out of that house, Megan urged one evening over wine. Living with him, seeing his face every day, it's going to drive you insane. I know, Emma admitted, her voice heavy with exhaustion. But where would I go? The bakery barely pays enough to cover the mortgage. We'll figure it out, Megan said firmly. But staying there with him, it's not healthy, Em. That conversation stuck with Emma. The next morning, she decided to take Megan's advice and focus on finding her own space. It wasn't just about physical distance. It was about reclaiming her independence. But life, as Emma was learning, had a way of throwing curveballs when she least expected them. That same day, Nicole walked into the bakery. Emma froze, her hands still gripping the dough she'd been kneading. For a moment, she thought she was imagining things, but there she was. Nicole, in all her polished, confident glory. She was dressed in yoga gear, her hair tied up in a messy bun that somehow looked effortlessly chic. She approached the counter with the kind of air that suggested she didn't have a care in the world. "Hi," Nicole said, her smile as radiant as the morning sun. "Can I get a coffee and a croissant?" Emma stared at her, her mind racing. What was she doing here? Was this some kind of twisted power move? Or was she genuinely oblivious to the fact that she was walking into the lion's den? With as much composure as she could muster, Emma nodded and began preparing the order. Her hands shook slightly as she poured the coffee, and she prayed Nicole wouldn't notice. Nicole, however, didn't seem to pick up on the tension. Instead, she leaned casually against the counter and said, "You have such a cute bakery. I've heard so much about it." "Thanks," Emma said stiffly, sliding the coffee and croissant across the counter. Nicole hesitated, as if she had something else to say. Then, with a small, almost apologetic smile, she added, "You know, David talks about you a lot. He says you're an amazing baker." Emma felt her stomach twist into knots. She met Nicole's gaze, searching for some hint of malice, but all she saw was a mix of curiosity and something else, pity. "That'll be $5.50, Emma said, her voice tight. Nicole handed over the cash and lingered for a moment longer. "I'm sure this is complicated," she said softly. "But for what it's worth, I didn't mean for things to happen this way." Emma didn't respond. She couldn't. Nicole's words hung in the air like a bad smell, and all she wanted was for her to leave. Finally, Nicole took the hint and walked out, leaving Emma to collapse onto a stool behind the counter. Her hands trembled as she replayed the interaction in her mind. It wasn't just that Nicole had come to her bakery, it was the audacity of her trying to explain herself, as if that could make any of this okay. That evening, Emma recounted the encounter to Megan, who was furious on her behalf. "She came to your bakery," Megan exclaimed, pacing back and forth. "What the hell is wrong with her? Does she think this is some kind of game?" "I don't know," Emma said, her voice hollow. "But she said David talks about me." Megan stopped pacing and stared at Emma. "And you believe her?" Emma hesitated. "I don't know what to believe anymore." "Well, here's what I believe," Megan said, her tone sharp. "Nicole Harper just painted a giant target on her back. She's messing with the wrong person." Emma appreciated Megan's fire, but she couldn't shake the sense of despair that clung to her. It wasn't just about Nicole. It was about everything. Her marriage, her future, her sense of self. It all felt like it was unraveling, and she didn't know how to stop it. A few days later, Emma's breaking point finally came. It was a Friday evening, and she had just finished closing up the bakery when she spotted David's truck parked outside Nicole's yoga studio. She hadn't planned on seeing him, but there he was, leaning against the hood of his truck, laughing with Nicole like they didn't have a care in the world. Emma's chest tightened as she watched them, her mind racing with a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. She thought about confronting them, about marching up to David and demanding to know how he could treat her this way. But before she could act, Nicole leaned in and kissed him. Emma turned away, her heart shattering all over again. She walked back to the bakery, her mind a blur. She had spent so long hoping that things might get better, that David might realize what he was throwing away. But now, she knew the truth. David had already moved on. That night, Emma called Megan and told her everything. Megan was furious, of course, but she also knew that Emma needed more than just anger. She needed a plan. "You're done waiting for him to sign those papers," Megan said. "We're going to take control of this situation tomorrow. We're going to pack your things, and you're moving out." No more living under the same roof as that man. Emma hesitated, but deep down, she knew Megan was right. It was time to stop clinging to the past and start building a new future, one without David. The next day, Emma and Megan spent hours packing up her belongings. It was a painful process, but with each box she filled, Emma felt a small sense of relief. By the time they were done, Emma's car was packed, and Megan had arranged for her to stay in a spare room at her place until she could find her own apartment. As Emma drove away from the house she had shared with David, she felt a mix of emotions. There was sadness, of course, but there was also a flicker of hope. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was taking control of her life. Emma's first week living with Megan was a whirlwind of emotions. The relief of escaping her toxic environment was palpable, but the pain of leaving behind the life she had built with David still lingered. Megan, ever the loyal friend, made sure Emma stayed busy. They spent their evenings brainstorming ways to rebuild her confidence, even compiling a list of goals Emma could focus on, small victories to help her rediscover her sense of self. But despite Megan's efforts, the wounds were still fresh. Every time Emma closed her eyes, she saw David and Nicole together, laughing like the betrayal was nothing more than a casual decision. It haunted her. Things came to a head one evening when Megan found Emma staring blankly at her phone, scrolling through social media. "You've got to stop torturing yourself," Megan said, plucking the phone out of her hands. "David's not worth it." Emma sighed, her shoulders sagging. "It's not just about him. It's about me. How could I have let it get this bad? How did I not see it sooner?" "You trusted him," Megan said firmly. "That's not a flaw, Emma. That's what good people do. He's the one who broke that trust, not you." As Emma worked to find her footing, life continued to throw challenges her way. One morning at the bakery, she was busy prepping for the day when the bell above the door chimed. She looked up and felt her stomach drop. David was standing there, looking as though he hadn't slept in days. "Emma," he began, his voice low and tentative. "Can we talk?" Emma stiffened, the familiar surge of anger and hurt bubbling to the surface. "What do you want, David?" He shifted uncomfortably, his hands shoved into his pockets. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened, about us, and I just want to say I'm sorry." Emma blinked, caught off guard by his sudden apology. "You're sorry. That's it?" "No," David said quickly. "I mean, I'm sorry for the way I handled things, for hurting you. I never meant to." "Don't," Emma interrupted, her voice sharp. "Don't tell me you never meant to hurt me. You knew exactly what you were doing, David. You chose her over me, over us." David's face fell, and for a moment, Emma thought she saw a flicker of regret in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. Not after everything he had put her through. "I'm not here to make excuses," he said softly. I miss you, Emma. And I want to fix this." Emma let out a bitter laugh. "Fix this? You can't just show up here and expect to sweep everything under the rug. That's not how this works." David took a step closer, his voice pleading. "I know I messed up, but we've been through so much together. Doesn't that count for something?" Emma met his gaze, her heart aching with the weight of his words. There was a time when she might have given anything to hear him say those things, but now they felt hollow, forced. "No, David," she said firmly. "It doesn't not anymore." As David left the bakery, Emma felt a strange sense of closure. For months, she had clung to the hope that he might come back to her, that he might realize the mistake he had made. But now, she saw things clearly. David wasn't her future. He was her past, and it was time to leave him there. Emma threw herself into her work, pouring her energy into the bakery, and finding joy in the small victories. She began experimenting with new recipes, adding unique twists to her menu that quickly became the talk of the town. Customers flocked to Sweet Escape. And for the first time in months, Emma felt like she was regaining control of her life. But just as she started to find her footing, another curveball came her way. It happened on a quiet Wednesday afternoon. Emma was in the middle of decorating a batch of custom cupcakes when Megan burst into the bakery, her face pale and eyes wide. "Emma?" she said breathlessly. "You're not going to believe this." "What is it?" Emma asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "It's Nicole," Megan said, lowering her voice. "She's pregnant." Emma froze, the words hitting her like a ton of bricks. "What?" Megan nodded, her expression grim. She posted about it on Instagram. She's having David's baby. For a moment, Emma couldn't speak. Her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, each one more painful than the last. Nicole and David were having a baby. The man who had betrayed her, who had left her broken and questioning everything, was about to start a family with someone else. "Are you okay?" Megan asked, placing a hand on her shoulder. Emma swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay composed. "I don't know, but I will be." The news of Nicole's pregnancy spread through Greenridge like wildfire. Everywhere Emma went, she felt the weight of the town's pitying stares. But instead of letting it break her, she used it as fuel. She refused to let David and Nicole's choices define her. She was stronger than that. Megan, ever the loyal friend, made it her mission to keep Emma's spirits high. One evening, she convinced Emma to join her for trivia night at the local pub. At first, Emma was reluctant, but as the night went on, she found herself laughing and enjoying the company of friends. It was a small moment of happiness, but it was a start. As the weeks passed, Emma continued to rebuild her life. She found a small apartment above the bakery, a cozy space that felt like her own little sanctuary. She began taking long walks through the town, rediscovering the beauty of Greenridge and the community that had always supported her. And slowly, but surely, Emma began to heal. Just when Emma thought the storm had passed, life threw her one final twist. It happened on a crisp autumn morning. Emma was opening the bakery when she heard the sound of tires screeching outside. She looked up just in time to see a car speeding away, leaving a large bouquet of flowers on the doorstep. Curious, Emma picked up the bouquet and found a note attached. It was from David. The note read, "Emma, I know I've made mistakes, but I still love you. Please, can we talk?" Emma stared at the note, a mix of emotions swirling inside her. Part of her wanted to rip it to shreds, but another part of her, one she wasn't proud of, felt a flicker of something she couldn't quite name. She took a deep breath and placed the note on the counter. She had come so far, and she wasn't about to let David's words pull her back into the chaos she had worked so hard to escape. That evening, as she sat in her apartment sipping tea, Emma made a decision. She wasn't going to let her past define her future. She had spent too long living in the shadow of David's betrayal, and it was time to take control of her story. Emma picked up her phone and dialed Megan's number. "I've made up my mind," she said firmly. "I'm moving forward. No more looking back." Megan's voice was filled with pride. "That's my girl." Emma's journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the right path. She had learned to trust herself again, to find strength in her pain, and to embrace the possibilities of a brighter future. For Emma, the bouquet left on her bakery's doorstep wasn't just a symbol of David's regret. It was an unwelcome reminder of the chaos she had finally started to leave behind. She wrestled with what to do about the note, feeling a whirlwind of emotions. Part of her wanted to throw it in the trash, but another part, a quieter, more vulnerable side, wondered if this was her chance to gain closure. Megan, of course, had no patience for David's gesture. "Don't even think about responding," she said, her voice brimming with indignation. "He's only doing this because he feels guilty. You've come too far to let him drag you back." "I know," Emma replied, though her tone was uncertain. "But maybe I need to hear what he has to say. Just one conversation. To close this chapter for good." Megan frowned, but ultimately nodded. "If you think it'll help, fine, but don't let him manipulate you." That evening, Emma texted David, agreeing to meet at a small cafe the following day. She arrived early, her stomach knotted with anxiety. The air outside was crisp, and the sky threatened rain, mirroring her unease. She sat at a corner table, her fingers wrapped around a mug of tea as she waited. When David walked in, Emma was struck by how different he looked. He seemed older, tired, as if the weight of his choices had finally caught up with him. He approached the table cautiously, his expression unsure. "Thanks for meeting me," he said as he sat down. Emma nodded, keeping her face neutral. "What do you want, David?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I wanted to apologize for everything, for how I treated you, for Nicole, for all of it." Emma's heart ached at his words, but she didn't let it show. "Is that all?" David hesitated, his eyes searching hers. "I miss you, Emma." I miss us, I know I messed up, but I want to fix it. I want to come home. Emma stared at him, her emotions a tangled mess. For months, she had longed to hear those words, to have David realize the mistake he had made. But now, sitting across from him, she felt nothing but anger and exhaustion. You can't just say you're sorry and expect everything to go back to the way it was, she said, her voice steady. You destroyed our marriage, David. You chose her. You don't get to come back now because you're having second thoughts. David leaned forward, his voice desperate. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one. I'll do whatever it takes, Emma. I'll prove to you that I've changed. Emma shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. You're too late, I've moved on, David. And I think you should too. As she left the cafe, Emma felt a strange sense of relief. Saying goodbye to David for good wasn't easy, but it was necessary. She had spent too long holding on to the idea of what could have been. Now, she was finally ready to let it go. The following weeks brought new challenges. The bakery was busier than ever, and while Emma was grateful for the success, the constant demands of running the business left her little time to process her emotions. Megan, ever the supportive friend, stepped in to help, but even her boundless energy couldn't fix everything. One afternoon, as Emma was preparing for the holiday rush, she received an unexpected visitor. Nicole walked into the bakery, her expression unreadable. Emma, Nicole began, her voice tentative. Can we talk? Emma crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. What could you possibly have to say to me? Nicole hesitated, then sighed. I wanted to apologize for everything. Emma raised an eyebrow. For everything, you're going to have to be more specific. Nicole looked down, fidgeting with the strap of her purse. I didn't mean for things to happen the way they did. I never wanted to hurt you. Emma let out a bitter laugh. You didn't mean to hurt me. You slept with my husband. You knew what you were doing. Nicole winced but didn't argue. You're right, she admitted. I made mistakes, big ones, and now I'm paying for them. Emma's anger faltered as she noticed the exhaustion in Nicole's eyes. What do you mean? David and I, things aren't what I thought they'd be, Nicole said quietly. He's distant, distracted. I thought we had something real, but now, I don't know. Emma stared at her, a mix of pity and vindication swirling inside her. And you thought telling me this would make you feel better? Nicole shook her head. No, I needed to say it. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Emma sighed, her shoulders sagging. Nicole, I don't know what you're looking for, but I can't give it to you. You and David made your choices. Now you have to live with them. Nicole nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I understand, I'm sorry. As Nicole left the bakery, Emma felt a strange sense of closure. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was enough. The final turning point came during the bakery's annual holiday party. The event was a tradition in Greenridge, drawing customers and friends for an evening of treats and cheer. Emma had poured her heart into making the party special. And as the night unfolded, she couldn't help but feel proud of what she had accomplished. Megan, of course, was by her side, helping to keep everything running smoothly. Look at you, she said with a grin, hosting the biggest event of the season. Who needs David when you've got this? Emma laughed, her heart feeling lighter than it had in months. You're right, I don't need him. I've got everything I need right here. As the night wound down, Emma stood at the counter, watching her guests laugh and enjoy themselves. For the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. Emma's journey had been anything but easy, but it had taught her one important lesson. She was stronger than she ever realized. The pain of David's betrayal had nearly broken her, but it had also forced her to grow, to rediscover herself, and to build a life that was truly her own. And as she looked out at the smiling faces in her bakery, she knew one thing for certain. She was finally free. The holiday party at Sweet Escape had been a roaring success, but the quiet aftermath allowed Emma to reflect on how far she'd come, and how far she still had to go. The laughter of her guests still echoed in her mind as she cleaned up, but the lingering weight of unfinished business reminded her that her journey was far from over. It was just as Emma began locking up for the night that the unexpected happened. A sharp knock at the door startled her. She hesitated before peeking through the glass, only to see David standing outside, his expression troubled. "Emma, please," he said through the door. "I need to talk to you." Emma's instincts screamed to ignore him, to turn off the lights, and pretend she hadn't heard, but something in his tone stopped her. Against her better judgment, she unlocked the door and opened it just wide enough to look him in the eye. "What do you want, David?" she asked, her voice firm. David stepped inside, the cold air following him. He looked out of place in the cozy, warmly lit bakery, like a man on the verge of unraveling. "I know I shouldn't be here," he began, his voice shaky. "But I couldn't leave things the way they are." Emma crossed her arms, her patience already wearing thin. "We've had this conversation. I've made my decision." "I know," David said quickly. "But this isn't about us. It's about Nicole." Emma blinked, taken aback. "What about her?" David ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "She's been lying to me about everything." The revelation hit Emma like a freight train. For a moment, she didn't know whether to feel vindicated or further exhausted by David's drama. "What do you mean, lying?" she asked, her skepticism clear. David hesitated before continuing. "She told me she was pregnant, but she's not." Emma stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. "So she faked a pregnancy? Why?" "I think she was trying to trap me," David admitted, his voice filled with regret. "I've been blind, Emma. I thought I was starting fresh, but it's been a disaster." Emma couldn't help but feel a pang of bitter satisfaction. "And now you're here, expecting me to take you back? Fix your mess?" "No," David said, his voice firm. "I don't expect anything from you. I needed to say it out loud, to admit that I was wrong." Emma stared at him, her emotions swirling. This was the closure she had longed for, the moment where David finally took responsibility for his actions. But instead of feeling relief, she felt nothing. "David," she said quietly, "I don't know what you're looking for, but I can't give it to you. You need to figure this out on your own." He nodded, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I understand. I'm sorry." Emma watched as he left, the door closing behind him with a soft click. For the first time, she felt the weight of his presence lift. David's chapter in her life was finally over. The next day, Emma confided in Megan, who wasted no time expressing her thoughts. "Are you serious?" Megan said, practically vibrating with anger. "He wants sympathy after everything he's done. The audacity." Emma couldn't help but laugh at Megan's fiery reaction. "I know, but honestly, I'm not mad anymore. I think I'm finally done carrying that weight." "Well, good," Megan said firmly. Because you deserve so much better." With David out of the picture, Emma threw herself into her work, determined to build something meaningful. Sweet Escape flourished as she introduced new holiday-themed treats, and the bakery became a hub of warmth and joy for the community. Customers often commented on how much lighter and happier Emma seemed, and for the first time in a long time, she believed them. But just as Emma started to feel like she had everything under control, life threw her another curveball. One chilly evening, as Emma was locking up the bakery, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Out stepped Nicole, her usual confidence replaced with a look of desperation. Emma sighed, already bracing herself for another confrontation. "Emma," Nicole called out, her voice trembling. "Can we talk, please?" Emma hesitated, but ultimately nodded. "Make it quick." Nicole approached, her eyes filled with tears. "I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I don't know who else to turn to." "That's a first," Emma said dryly. "What do you want, Nicole?" "I messed up," Nicole admitted, her voice breaking. "David found out about the lie, and now he's gone. I've lost everything." Emma folded her arms, her expression unreadable. "And why is that my problem?" Nicole looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not, but I wanted to tell you the truth about why I did it." Emma arched an eyebrow. This should be good. "I was jealous," Nicole said, tears streaming down her face. "You had everything I wanted. A beautiful home, a loving husband, a successful business, and I thought, if I could take that from you, I'd finally feel whole. But I was wrong." Emma stared at her, a mix of anger and pity churning inside her. "You tore my life apart because you were jealous. Do you even hear yourself? Nicole sobbed, her shoulders shaking. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, I needed you to know I'm so sorry. For a long moment, Emma said nothing. Then, with a deep breath, she spoke. Nicole, I don't know if I can ever forgive you, but I hope you figure out how to fix your own life, because I'm done letting you ruin mine. As Nicole left, Emma felt a sense of finality. The storm that had upended her life was finally passing, and she was ready to move forward. In the days that followed, Emma focused on her bakery and her own happiness. She started taking weekends off, exploring hobbies she had long neglected. She even signed up for a pottery class, where she met new friends who reminded her of the joy of starting fresh. Megan, of course, was her biggest cheerleader. Look at you, she said one evening, as they sipped wine on Emma's balcony. You're glowing. Emma smiled, the weight of the past finally lifting. It feels good to finally let go. And just like that, Emma's life began to blossom. Sweet Escape continued to thrive, and she found herself more at peace than she had been in years. The betrayals of David and Nicole no longer defined her. They were simply chapters in a story she had rewritten. For the first time in a long time, Emma was free. Emma's world was finally finding balance, but life had one more test in store for her. A moment that would define her resilience and cement her newfound strength. It was a cold, gray afternoon when Megan stormed into Sweet Escape, her face a mask of urgency. Emma, busy with a tray of freshly baked pastries, barely had time to greet her before Megan blurted out, "You're not going to believe this, but David's suing you." Emma froze, the pastry tray trembling in her hands. "What?" she managed, disbelief coursing through her. Megan slammed a document onto the counter. "I heard it from my cousin, who works at the courthouse. He's claiming a stake in the bakery, saying it was community property during your marriage." Emma's stomach dropped. "But that's ridiculous. I built this place on my own. He didn't contribute a single penny." "Doesn't matter," Megan said grimly. "He's hoping to drag this out, bleed you dry with legal fees." For a moment, Emma felt the familiar weight of helplessness creeping in, but then she squared her shoulders, her resolve hardening. If he wants a fight, he'll get one. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings, paperwork, and mounting tension. Emma's lawyer, a sharp and no-nonsense woman named Claire, assured her that David's case was weak, but the stress of the situation was undeniable. "David's counting on you to settle," Claire explained during a meeting. "He thinks you'll give in to avoid the hassle." "Well, he doesn't know me anymore," Emma replied, her voice steady. "I'm not the same person he walked out on." Despite her confidence, the process took its toll. Emma's nights were restless, her mind consumed with worries about what she could lose. Sweet Escape wasn't just a business, it was her lifeline, her proof that she could rebuild her life on her own terms. Megan and Emma's friends rallied around her, offering support wherever they could. "We've got your back," Megan said one evening as they worked late preparing for a catering order. "David's going to regret ever messing with you." As the court date loomed closer, Emma discovered something that turned the tide. While combing through old financial records, she found a paper trail proving that every dollar invested in Sweet Escape had come from her personal savings she had amassed long before her marriage to David. Claire was ecstatic. "This is a game changer," she said, holding up the documents like a trophy. "With this, we can shut him down before this even goes to trial." But the victory wasn't just about winning the case, it was about reclaiming her power. For so long, Emma had felt like David held all the cards. Now she was ready to show him that she was in control. The day of the hearing arrived, and Emma walked into the courthouse with her head held high. David was already there, flanked by his lawyer. He gave her a smirk, as if he believed he'd already won. But as the proceedings began, that smirk quickly faded. Claire presented Emma's evidence with precision, dismantling David's claims piece by piece. By the time she finished, it was clear that his case had no foundation. The judge ruled in Emma's favor, dismissing David's lawsuit entirely. As they exited the courtroom, Claire turned to Emma with a triumphant smile. "You did it." Emma nodded, a sense of relief washing over her. "No, we did it." As she walked past David, she paused long enough to meet his gaze. "Don't come after me again," she said firmly. "You won't win." For the first time, David looked genuinely defeated. The victory in court marked a turning point for Emma. It wasn't just about keeping Sweet Escape. It was about proving to herself that she was capable of standing up to the people who had tried to tear her down. And with that realization came a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in years. Back at the bakery, Megan had organized a small celebration. Friends and loyal customers gathered to toast Emma's victory, their support a reminder of how far she had come. "You're amazing, you know that?" Megan said as they clinked glasses. Emma smiled, the weight of the past finally lifting. "I'm just finally starting to believe it." But life wasn't done with its surprises. A week later, Nicole showed up at Sweet Escape once again, but this time she wasn't alone. She was holding the hand of a young boy, a child no older than 2, with dark curls and a shy smile. Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Nicole," she said cautiously, "what are you doing here?" Nicole looked nervous, her grip on the boy's hand tightening. "I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I need your help." Emma frowned, her guard immediately up. "Why would I help you?" Nicole hesitated, then knelt down to the boy's level. "This is Daniel," she said softly. "David's son." Emma felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "His son. But you said—" "I lied," Nicole admitted, her voice trembling. "I didn't know I was actually pregnant until after David left me. He doesn't know about Daniel, and I don't want him to." Emma stared at Nicole, her mind racing. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need someone I can trust," Nicole said desperately. "David would ruin him, Emma. I've seen what he's capable of. I don't know what to do." For a moment, Emma didn't know what to say. She had every reason to turn Nicole away, to let her deal with the mess she had created. But as she looked at Daniel, something inside her softened. He was innocent in all of this, a child caught in the chaos of adults who had failed him. Emma took a deep breath. "Let's talk." Nicole's confession added a new layer of complexity to Emma's life, but it also gave her a sense of purpose. Together, they worked out a plan to ensure Daniel's safety, one that would keep him far away from David's influence. It wasn't easy, but for the first time, Emma felt like she was in control of her story. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. And as she looked at Daniel, she realized that even in the darkest moments, there was always a chance for light to break through. Nicole's revelation about Daniel sent shockwaves through Emma's life. While she had just begun to feel like the dust had settled, this new twist reignited a storm of emotions. Nicole's request for help wasn't just a plea. It was a challenge to Emma's resolve and her sense of justice. For the next few days, Emma found herself juggling her busy bakery schedule, while secretly meeting with Nicole to figure out a plan. Nicole, humbled and visibly anxious, seemed determined to keep Daniel far from David's grasp. "I've been looking into legal options," Nicole said during one of their conversations, "but I don't have the resources to fight him if he finds out." Emma studied Nicole, trying to reconcile the person before her with the woman who had shattered her marriage. It wasn't easy, but as she looked at Daniel, who was playing quietly in the corner, with a wooden train set, she couldn't help but feel protective. "We'll figure it out," Emma said firmly. "He's not going to take Daniel from you." The tension reached its breaking point a week later, when David unexpectedly showed up at Nicole's apartment. Nicole, terrified that he had somehow discovered the truth, called Emma in a panic. "He was banging on the door, demanding to talk to me," Nicole explained over the phone, her voice shaking. "I didn't let him in, but he said he knew I was hiding something." Emma felt a surge of anger. David's behavior had gone from manipulative to outright threatening, and she wasn't going to let him intimidate Nicole, or anyone else, any longer. "It's time to take this to the next level," Emma said, her determination crystal clear. The next day, Emma met with Claire, her lawyer, to discuss their options. Claire, ever the strategist, suggested filing a restraining order against David on behalf of Nicole and Daniel. "We need to send a message that his behavior won't be tolerated," Claire said. "And if he does try to pursue custody, we'll be ready to fight." Nicole hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. "What if he retaliates?" Emma placed a reassuring hand on Nicole's shoulder. "He won't, not if we stay ahead of him." As the legal wheels began to turn, Emma found herself facing a personal reckoning. Her involvement in Nicole's life wasn't just about helping Daniel. It was about proving to herself that she could rise above the pain David and Nicole had caused her. But the stakes only grew higher when David, apparently sensing that something was amiss, began digging deeper. He started showing up at the bakery, his presence a dark cloud that unsettled both Emma and her staff. "David, you need to leave," Emma said firmly one afternoon when he appeared uninvited. "I know you're hiding something," David shot back, his voice low and threatening. "And I'm going to find out what it is." Emma refused to be intimidated. "Whatever you're looking for, you won't find it here. Now get out." The confrontation with David only strengthened Emma's resolve. She doubled down on her efforts to protect Nicole and Daniel, working closely with Claire to build a solid case against him. Meanwhile, Nicole began taking steps to distance herself from David entirely, including moving to a new apartment in a quieter part of town. But just when they thought they were gaining the upper hand, David made his move. He filed a petition for custody, claiming that Nicole was an unfit mother and demanding a paternity test to prove he was Daniel's father. The news hit Nicole like a freight train. "How did he find out?" she whispered, her face pale. Emma clenched her fists, her anger bubbling to the surface. "It doesn't matter, we'll fight this. He's not going to win." The custody battle became a high-stakes showdown, with every detail of Nicole's life, and by extension, Emma's, in the spotlight. David's lawyer painted a picture of Nicole as irresponsible and unstable, while Claire countered with evidence of David's manipulative and aggressive behavior. The courtroom was a pressure cooker of emotions, with each side presenting their case with fervor. Nicole struggled to keep her composure as David testified, his words dripping with insincerity. "I just want what's best for my son," David said, his expression carefully calculated. "And I don't believe Nicole can provide that." When it was Nicole's turn to speak, she held Daniel's picture in her hands as she addressed the court. "I've made mistakes," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But everything I've done has been to protect my son. He's my world, and I would do anything to keep him safe." Emma watched from the gallery, her heart aching for Nicole. Despite their complicated history, she couldn't deny the sincerity in Nicole's words, or the love she had for her son. The pivotal moment came when Claire presented the evidence they had painstakingly gathered. Records of David's harassment, his history of manipulation, and even testimonies from former acquaintances who painted a damning picture of his character. The court's decision was swift and decisive. Custody would remain with Nicole, with strict limitations placed on David's visitation rights. Emma and Nicole breathed a collective sigh of relief as the judge delivered the ruling. "It's over," Nicole whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We did it." Emma nodded, her own emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "You did it," she said quietly. "You stood up for yourself, and for Daniel. That's what matters." The aftermath of the custody battle brought a sense of closure that Emma hadn't anticipated. While Nicole focused on rebuilding her life with Daniel, Emma turned her attention back to Sweet Escape, which had become a beacon of stability and hope in her own journey. Megan, ever the optimist, couldn't help but celebrate. "You've become a real superhero. You know that saving the day, and still running the best bakery in town." Emma laughed, the sound light and genuine. "I'm just glad it's over." But deep down, she knew that the experience had changed her. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving, stronger and more resilient than she had ever thought possible. As the holiday season approached, Emma threw herself into preparations for Sweet Escape's annual celebration. The bakery buzzed with activity, its warm lights and festive decorations a testament to Emma's unwavering spirit. And when the night of the party arrived, Emma stood at the center of it all, surrounded by friends, loyal customers, and the people who had stood by her through every challenge. As she looked around, she realized that the pain of the past no longer held her captive. For the first time, Emma felt truly free. The courtroom victory was the turning point, not just for Nicole, but for Emma as well. The months of stress and conflict had pushed both women to their limits, but now, standing on the other side of it, they could finally breathe. For Nicole, life with Daniel became simpler and more focused. She moved to a cozy new apartment on the outskirts of town, far from the chaos that David had brought into their lives. There, she could give her son the stability he deserved. For Emma, the experience was a testament to how far she had come. She'd faced David's manipulations, revisited her own pain, and emerged stronger. And through it all, she'd found something unexpected: a sense of purpose in helping someone else rebuild their life. With a custody battle behind them, Emma and Nicole's relationship found a new rhythm. While they weren't exactly best friends, there was a mutual respect that hadn't existed before. One afternoon, Nicole stopped by Sweet Escape with Daniel in tow. The little boy's eyes lit up as he spotted the rows of colorful cupcakes and pastries. "Pick whichever one you like," Emma said, smiling at him. Daniel grinned, pointing to a chocolate cupcake with sprinkles. As Nicole helped him to a seat, she turned to Emma, her expression soft. "I owe you so much," Nicole said quietly. "I don't know how to thank you." Emma shrugged, brushing flour off her apron. "You don't owe me anything. Just focus on giving Daniel the life he deserves." Nicole nodded, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "You didn't have to help me. Not after everything I did. But you did anyway. That says a lot about who you are." Emma didn't reply immediately, but Nicole's words stayed with her. For so long, she had thought of herself as someone defined by loss, of her marriage, of her trust, of the future she thought she'd have. But now, she saw herself differently. She wasn't a victim of her circumstances. She was someone who had fought to reclaim her happiness. The bakery had always been a source of comfort for Emma, but now it became something more, a symbol of everything she had built and overcome. With Megan's encouragement, she decided to expand Sweet Escape, introducing a small outdoor seating area where customers could gather and enjoy the cozy atmosphere. The community embraced the changes, and Sweet Escape flourished. Emma found joy not just in the success of her business, but in the connections she had built with her customers and friends. She realized that the bakery wasn't just a place for pastries. It was a place where people found comfort and joy, just as she had. As for David, his grip on Emma's life had finally slipped. After losing the custody battle and exhausting his legal options, he disappeared from town. There were whispers of him moving to another state to start over, but Emma didn't care to know the details. What mattered was that she was free from his manipulations, his lies, and the pain he had caused. For the first time in years, she felt like she could look toward the future, without the shadow of her past holding her back. One evening, as Emma closed up the bakery, Megan popped in with a bottle of wine and a mischievous grin. "I thought we could toast to your freedom," Megan said, setting the bottle on the counter. Emma laughed, grabbing 2 glasses. "You know, I never thought I'd get here for so long. It felt like I was stuck in this loop, reliving the same pain over and over." "And now?" Megan asked, pouring the wine. Emma thought for a moment before answering. "Now, I feel like I can finally move forward. I don't need closure from David, or anyone else. I've created my own closure." Megan raised her glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," Emma echoed, clinking her glass against Megan's. Emma's journey hadn't been easy, but it had taught her some invaluable lessons. She learned the importance of standing up for herself, of trusting her instincts, and of letting go of the things that no longer served her. She also learned that healing wasn't a straight line. It was messy and complicated, but it was worth the effort. And most importantly, she realized that she didn't need validation from anyone else to know her worth. She had found it within herself. As the months turned into years, Emma continued to thrive. Sweet Escape became a beloved staple in the community, and Emma found joy in mentoring young bakers who shared her passion. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was hers, a life she had built with her own 2 hands. One sunny afternoon, as Emma watched customers enjoying pastries in the new outdoor seating area, she felt a deep sense of contentment. She had faced her past, overcome her challenges, and emerged stronger than ever. And as she looked ahead, she knew that whatever came next, she was ready. Emma's story is a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way forward. It's not always easy, and it might take time, but healing and growth are always possible. Emma didn't just survive her challenges, she transformed them into something beautiful. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world to me, and I can't wait to share more incredible stories with you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.